You know that feeling when you see a motorcycle brand nobody's heard of suddenly showing up at the biggest races in the world? Kove first entered Dakar in 2023 with 3 bikes, and all 3 finished. This Chinese brand went from zero to hero in just a few years, and now they're making the Japanese Big Four seriously nervous. We'll showcase 5 facts about the brand, highlighting how founder Zhang Xue built this company, their success in Dakar and World SBK-related series, and what it means for riders who want race-proven bikes they can actually buy. But first, you need to understand what drives someone to think they can beat Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki. Number 1. The mechanic who dared to dream big. Zhang Xue founded Kove Motorcycles in 2017 with what seemed like an impossible dream. This former mechanic and engine builder wanted to build motorcycles that would prove themselves in competition before customers ever saw them in showrooms. Most people thought he had lost his mind. Chinese motorcycles had a reputation so bad that riders would laugh at the idea of taking one seriously. Meanwhile, the big 4 Japanese brands had been ruling the motorcycle world for decades. They had millions of dollars, years of racing experience, and loyal customers who wouldn't even look at anything else. But Zhang wasn't just another businessman trying to make a fast profit. This guy was a racer himself who actually understood what riders wanted from their bikes. He'd spent years with his hands covered in oil, building engines and fixing problems that other people couldn't solve. When he came up with his "Focus on Performance" slogan, it wasn't some marketing team's clever idea. It was his personal mission, based on everything he'd learned from wrenching on bikes and racing them. Here's what made Zhang different from everyone else trying to break into the motorcycle business. His approach was build for the race, then adapt for customers. No gradual build-up, no testing the waters with easier competitions. He went straight for the big leagues to validate his technical choices. While many Chinese brands relied on existing engine designs, Zhang was building something completely different from the ground up. His approach was the opposite of what everyone expected. Instead of starting cheap and hoping to improve over time, he focused on making bikes that could actually compete with the best in the world. Sure, Kove makes roughly 35,000 motorcycles a year. That's tiny compared to the millions of bikes that Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki pump out every year. But size wasn't his advantage. His advantage was that racing-first mentality that nobody else was using. Here's what the Big Four didn't see coming, though. Zhang's approach was going to create motorcycles that could actually compete on performance, not just price. This wasn't going to be another story about cheap knockoffs flooding the market and disappointing everyone who bought them. This was something totally different. Zhang was building the foundation for a legitimate challenge to motorcycle royalty. His bikes would have to prove themselves in competition before a single customer handed over their money. That kind of confidence either comes from someone who's completely crazy or someone who knows exactly what they're doing. The real test was coming, though. All the workshop hours and racing philosophy in the world don't mean anything until you put your bikes where failure isn't just embarrassing, it's deadly. Number 2. Baptism by fire in the desert. Zhang chose the Dakar Rally as his proving ground. This is the race that destroys million-dollar factory bikes from established brands every single year. You know those fancy European racing machines that cost more than most people's cars? Yeah, they break down in Dakar all the time. In 2023, Kove rolled up with 3 bikes to what's basically motorcycle hell on earth. We're talking about 8,000 miles through desert, mountains, and everything nature can throw at you to kill your bike. The sand gets into everything, the heat melts components, and the terrain beats bikes to death. Most manufacturers spend years preparing for this race and still fail miserably. Everyone expected Kove to break down, quit, or just disappear like so many other hopeful brands before them. The smart money was on these Chinese bikes lasting maybe 2 days before something major went wrong. After all, this was their first time at the biggest rally race in the world, and they were going up against teams with decades of experience. Here's what puts this whole thing in perspective. Dakar regularly knocks out roughly 1/3 of competitors. In Kove's 2025 entry, 134 bikes started and 45 withdrew. Bikes from Honda, KTM, and Yamaha regularly don't make it to the end, and these companies have been building rally bikes for decades. But something incredible happened that nobody saw coming. All 3 Kove bikes crossed the finish line. Not 1, not 2, but all 3 bikes made it through the entire brutal course. When those results came in, the motorcycle world started paying serious attention. This wasn't just luck or a fluke. This was solid engineering that actually worked under the worst conditions possible. Fast forward to 2025, and Kove came back with even bigger plans. They showed up with 12 bikes this time, proving they were serious about making Dakar a regular thing. Out of those 12 bikes, 9 of them finished the race. That's a 75% finish rate in the world's toughest motorcycle competition. To put that number in context, most factory teams from Europe would be thrilled with a 75% finish rate. These are teams spending millions of dollars on development and support. Meanwhile, Kove was achieving the same results as a relatively new player in the game. Rider Niels Therick grabbed 15th place overall during this campaign. That might not sound amazing until you realize he beat some very expensive European factory efforts that had way more money and experience behind them. Kove's rally platform uses a 448.9 cubic centimeter single-cylinder engine derived from Zhang Xue technology in the 450 Rally. The production street-legal 450 Rally weighs about 320 pounds dry and carries an 8.0-gallon fuel system. The 2025 Kove release highlights their in-house second-generation engine development, with claims that improvements will continue into a third-generation engine for future Dakar entries. The desert had delivered its verdict. Kove bikes could handle punishment that breaks bikes costing 3 times as much. But the racing world was about to discover that desert survival was just the beginning of what these motorcycles could do. Number 3. From desert to racetrack domination. Kove's racing program expanded rapidly after their 2023 Dakar success, and by 2024, they were competing in WorldSSP300, a World SBK-related series. Rally bikes need to handle rocks and jumps, while track bikes demand perfect aerodynamics on smooth pavement. Most brands spend decades mastering just one discipline. World SSP300 is where young riders prove they have what it takes before moving up to MotoGP. This isn't some weekend club race. It's fast, competitive, and completely unforgiving. One mistake, and you're off the track or worse. The bikes need to be perfect because the margin for error is basically zero. Here's where things get really interesting. In March 2024, Julio Garcia put a Kove motorcycle on the podium at a World SSP300 race in Barcelona, taking second place. This was the first time a Chinese motorcycle brand had ever stood on a World SSP300 podium. Ever. If Kove could build bikes that survived the brutal punishment of Dakar and competed on high-speed racetracks, what couldn't they do? This wasn't just about having one good bike anymore. This was about having engineering that worked in completely different situations. Mason Klein campaigned Kove rally prototypes in 2023 to 2024 and joined the factory effort with improved support in 2025. Their expanding World SBK program proved this podium finish wasn't a lucky accident. This was part of a bigger strategy that nobody else was pulling off successfully. You have to understand how crazy this whole situation was. Most motorcycle manufacturers pick their lane and stick with it. KTM dominates rally racing but struggles in other areas. Ducati kills it on the track but doesn't do rallies. Honda tries everything but usually focuses their best efforts on one discipline at a time. Kove had somehow cracked the code that stumped all these other manufacturers. They figured out how to build bikes that excelled in completely different racing disciplines without compromising either one. That's engineering talent most companies can only dream about having. The big 4 Japanese manufacturers suddenly realized they weren't dealing with just another budget brand trying to undercut their prices. They were facing a company that actually understood racing at the highest levels. When you can prove your bikes work in both the Dakar Rally and World SSP300, you're not playing around anymore. This wasn't about copying designs or building cheaper versions of existing bikes. Kove was creating original solutions that worked in the real world where it actually mattered. The racing results spoke louder than any marketing campaign ever could. But here's the million-dollar question that every rider was asking after seeing these results. Number 4. The bikes that back up the hype. Could regular riders actually get their hands on these race-proven machines? Racing success means nothing if the bikes never make it to showrooms where people can buy them. The 450 Rally brings genuine Dakar DNA straight to your local dealership. This isn't just a bike with racing stickers slapped on it. The 448.9 cubic centimeter single-cylinder uses Zhang Xue-built double overhead camshaft architecture with endurance tuning, Bosch electronic fuel injection, and an 8.0-gallon tank. The claimed dry weight sits around 320 pounds, and the whole package costs just $9,299. You're getting legitimate rally-proven technology for under 10 grand. Compare that to similar bikes from European brands that cost $15,000 or more for the same level of equipment. The 450 Rally delivers street-legal, Dakar-proven performance without the premium price tag that usually comes with racing pedigree. The 800X Pro takes things up another level with its 799 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, producing around 94 to 95 horsepower. The whole package weighs approximately 377 pounds dry, which is seriously light for what you're getting. European pricing hits around €9,999, with the US Rally version listed at $11,999. The 800X's parallel twin shares similar architecture and specs to the KTM-LC 8C family, which explains why it performs in the same ballpark as much more expensive bikes. These aren't cheap copies with budget components thrown together somewhere. Kove uses Bosch for fuel injection, KYB suspension, Tysco brakes, and multi-regulated Yuan suspension system on higher-spec 800X trims. The same suppliers that big European brands use, just without the European price markup. The 800X Rally pushes the adventure concept even further with tube-type wheels that handle serious punishment, higher ground clearance, and more suspension travel for big hits. This isn't just a street bike with knobby tires. It's built for real off-road work where other bikes would break. Most race replica bikes fall into two disappointing categories. They're either watered-down versions that remove all the good stuff to hit a price point, or crazy expensive machines that only rich collectors can afford. Kove had to prove they could deliver the real deal without falling into either trap. When you can buy a bike with genuine Dakar DNA for thousands less than European brands charge, something fundamental shifts in the motorcycle world. But having great bikes at great prices was only half the battle Kove needed to win. Number 5. Breaking into Fortress North America. The real test came when Kove tried to crack North American markets where made in China meant cheap toys, not serious motorcycles. This was way harder than winning races or building good bikes. You're dealing with decades of bad experiences and burned customers who got stuck with Chinese bikes that broke down with no parts support. North American riders had seen this movie before. Chinese brands would show up with big promises, sell a bunch of bikes, then disappear when things broke. Nobody wanted to get burned again. Dealers were cautious because they remembered the horror stories about friends getting stuck with broken bikes and no way to fix them. The U.S. importer made the smart move of stocking parts domestically right from the start. European operations set up similar warehouse arrangements to handle parts distribution across multiple markets. This addressed the biggest fear riders had about Chinese bikes. What happens when something breaks and you need parts? Having parts available locally meant riders wouldn't have to wait months for simple repairs. Kove completed homologation in Canada by October 2024, showing they were serious about doing things properly instead of cutting corners. Dealer network expansion and local warehousing became core parts of their go-to-market strategy rather than afterthoughts. Pricing remained aggressive even as they built proper support networks. The 800X Pro hit European markets at €9,999 with full warranty backing. This wasn't the usual Chinese strategy of rock-bottom prices and hope for the best. Kove was doing premium positioning backed by actual racing results. Mexico welcomed 16 new Chinese brands in 2025, with Kove leading the charge as motorcycle exports surged globally. The whole landscape was changing as Chinese manufacturers got serious about building real support networks, instead of just dumping products and running. Dealers finally had a Chinese brand they could sell with confidence. The racing wins gave them something to point to when customers asked tough questions. The proper support networks meant they wouldn't get angry phone calls from customers who couldn't get parts or service. Racing success had proven Kove could build bikes that worked. Now they had to prove they could support the riders who bought them. In conclusion, the motorcycle industry just got a wake-up call. Kove isn't displacing Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki overnight, but its racing-first strategy has delivered demonstrable, race-proven motorcycles at accessible prices. And that's forcing established brands to pay attention. Remember, Kove, first Dakar entry 2023 with all 3 bikes finishing, on Dakar 2025 fielded 12 with 9 finishing, a WorldSSP300 podium with Julio Garcia, and street-ready 450 Rally priced under $10,000. Those results speak louder than any marketing campaign ever could. Would you trade in your middleweight ADV for a 450 rally that finished Dakar? Why or why not? Share your experiences with Chinese bikes or parts support in the comments below.